When I was in 6th grade, my parents worked long hours, so they hired a babysitter to watch me after school until they got home. Her name was Rachel. She was a college student who lived a few blocks away, and her main job was just making sure I got home safely and stayed out of trouble until my parents got back. Every afternoon, she would meet me at the bus stop at the end of my street. The stop was simple, just a wooden sign near the corner where the road curved into our neighborhood. There were usually 5 or 6 kids who got off there. The first time Rachel mentioned the man, it seemed like nothing. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and we were walking back toward my house when she glanced across the street. "Do you know that guy?" she asked. I looked where she was pointing. Across the street, a dark sedan was parked near the curb. A man sat inside with the window halfway down. He looked like he was in his 40s, maybe. Brown hair, glasses. He wasn't doing anything obvious, just sitting there. I shrugged. "No." Rachel watched him for a few seconds longer than felt normal. "Has he ever talked to you?" she asked. "No." She nodded slowly. "Okay." Then we kept walking. At the time, I didn't think anything of it. People parked on that street all the time. The next afternoon, when the bus dropped us off, Rachel was already standing near the sign, waiting for me. As soon as I stepped off the bus, I saw her looking across the street again. The same car was there. Same spot. Same man. This time, he wasn't looking down at his phone or anything. He was watching the bus, watching the kids get off. Rachel took my backpack strap and gently guided me away from the curb. "Let's go," she said quickly. We crossed the street and started walking toward my house. As we walked, I glanced back. The man was still sitting there. His eyes followed us the entire time. After we turned the corner, Rachel slowed down. "You're sure he's never talked to you before?" she asked again. I shook my head. "He's been there 3 days now," she said quietly. That was the first time my stomach felt uneasy. 3 days? I had only noticed him twice. The next afternoon, the bus pulled up to the stop like usual. But when the doors opened, I saw something different. The man wasn't sitting in the car. He was standing outside it, leaning against the driver's side door. My chest tightened instantly. Rachel was already waiting at the corner. The moment she saw him, her expression changed. She walked quickly toward the bus door. "Come on," she said. I stepped off the bus, and as we started walking away, the man straightened up. He smiled. Then he lifted his hand and waved. It was the kind of slow, casual wave adults give kids they recognize. I froze for a second. Rachel grabbed my arm. "Keep walking," she whispered. We didn't stop. We didn't say anything. We just kept moving. I could feel his eyes on us as we walked away. About halfway down the block, I glanced back. He was still standing by his car, watching us. That night, Rachel told my parents about him. I remember sitting at the kitchen table while she explained everything. The car being there for multiple days. The way he watched the bus. The way he waved. My dad didn't seem too worried. "Probably someone waiting for their kid," he said. "But he never gets out when the kids do," Rachel replied. My mom asked if the man had spoken to me directly. When Rachel said no, the conversation sort of fizzled out. They told me to stay with Rachel at the bus stop and not talk to strangers. That was it. The next few days, the man wasn't there. Rachel still walked me to the bus stop every afternoon, but the car never showed up. Eventually, we both stopped talking about it. About a week later, though, something happened that scared Rachel enough to call my parents immediately. It was a Friday afternoon. Instead of meeting me at the stop, Rachel was waiting halfway down our street near my house. That was unusual. When I got off the bus and started walking toward home, she hurried toward me. "Come on," she said quickly. Her voice sounded tense. "What's wrong?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just kept walking. When we reached my driveway, she turned and looked back down the street. I followed her gaze. About 3 houses down, parked along the curb, was the same dark sedan. The man was sitting inside it. His window was down again, and he was staring directly at our house. Rachel immediately pulled me inside. She locked the door behind us. "What is it?" I asked. "That's him," she said. "The guy from the bus stop." My stomach dropped. He hadn't just followed us once. He had come into our neighborhood, and he knew which house I lived in. Rachel called my mom right away. My parents came home early that day. By the time they arrived, the car was gone. My dad drove around the neighborhood looking for it, but didn't find anything. They reported it to the police, but since the man hadn't actually approached me or said anything, there wasn't much they could do. For the next few weeks, my parents started picking me up directly from school instead of letting me take the bus. Eventually, things went back to normal. The man never showed up again, at least not where we could see him. But a few months later, something happened that still bothers me to this day. I was helping my dad clean out the garage when we found an old cardboard box sitting near the back wall. It wasn't ours. Inside the box were a few random things: empty soda bottles, a newspaper, and a disposable camera. The camera had already been used. My dad took the film to get it developed, thinking it might belong to a neighbor. When the pictures came back, most of them were just random shots of streets and houses, but a few of them made my dad go very quiet. They were pictures of our street, taken from inside a parked car, and in several of the photos, you could see me getting off the school bus. When I was 19, I worked the closing shift at a grocery store just outside town. It wasn't a bad job, but the hours weren't great. Most nights, I didn't clock out until around 11:30 p.m. By the time I left, the parking lot was usually empty, except for a couple employee cars, and maybe 1 or 2 stragglers finishing late shopping trips. My drive home took about 20 minutes. The first half was along a busy road with gas stations and fast food places. But after that, it turned into long stretches of quiet suburban streets. It was the same route every night. One night in late October, I noticed a car behind me shortly after leaving work. It didn't stand out at first. It was just another vehicle on the road, maybe 100 feet back. I didn't think anything of it. We drove through 2 intersections together, then 3. When I turned off the main road toward my neighborhood, the car turned too. Still not that strange. Plenty of people lived in that area. But then it followed me through another turn, and another. By the time I reached my street, the car was still behind me. Something about that made me uneasy. My neighborhood was small, maybe 15 houses total, and it ended in a cul-de-sac. Most of the time there was no traffic at all that late. I slowed down as I approached my driveway. The headlights behind me slowed too. That's when I decided not to pull in. Instead, I kept driving. I passed my house and continued toward the end of the street. The car stayed right behind me. When I reached the cul-de-sac, I looped around slowly and drove back out of the neighborhood. The car did the same thing. At that point, my stomach started to twist. It wasn't coincidence anymore. I drove around the block once, trying to act casual. The car followed every turn. But right as I was about to head toward my house again, the car suddenly turned down a different street and disappeared. I sat there in silence for a few seconds, trying to calm myself down. Maybe they were just lost. Maybe they lived nearby. That's what I told myself before finally pulling into my driveway. But the next night, the same thing happened. I finished work around the same time and pulled onto the road. Within 2 minutes, a car appeared behind me. At first, I wasn't sure it was the same one, but the longer I drove, the more certain I became. The headlights looked identical, slightly dim, with one that seemed a little brighter than the other. It followed me through the same intersections, stayed the same distance back, and when I turned toward my neighborhood, it turned too. This time, my heart was pounding. I repeated what I had done the night before and drove past my house. The car stayed with me again. We circled the block twice before it finally turned away down a side street. That should have been enough for me to report it, or at least tell someone. But I didn't. Part of me felt stupid even thinking it might be something serious. So I ignored it, but it kept happening. Not every single night, but most nights. I would leave work, and within minutes, the car would appear somewhere behind me, always at a distance, always following the same route, and always disappearing before I reached my driveway. After about a week of this, I started paying closer attention. The car was dark colored, maybe black or dark blue. It was an older sedan, nothing distinctive enough to immediately identify. I could never see the driver clearly. The headlights were always too bright in my rearview mirror. One night, I decided to change my route home completely. Instead of turning toward my neighborhood, I drove toward the highway and looped around through a different part of town. For a few minutes, there was no car behind me. I actually started to feel relieved. Then I stopped at a red light near a gas station. When I looked in my rearview mirror, my stomach dropped. The same car rolled up behind me. Same uneven headlights. Same distance. My mind immediately started racing. How would they know where I was going if I changed my route? Unless they weren't just following me from the store. Unless they already knew where I'd be. That night, I drove straight to a police station parking lot before going home. The car turned off 2 blocks before I got there. I sat in the lot for a few minutes, debating whether I should go inside. But without a license plate or any real proof, I convinced myself it would sound ridiculous. So I went home. The next few days were quiet. No car, no headlights behind me. I started thinking maybe whoever it was had gotten bored or moved on. Then one Friday night, I left work earlier than usual, around 10:45. I remember feeling tired and just wanting to get home. As I approached the first intersection on my usual route, I noticed a car parked on the side of the road up ahead. Its headlights were off, but as soon as I passed it, the headlights flicked on. The car pulled out behind me. My chest tightened immediately. Even without seeing the front of the car, I knew it was the same one. This time, I didn't wait. Instead of driving toward my neighborhood, I made 3 quick turns into a residential area I didn't normally drive through. The car followed every single one. That's when the fear really set in. They weren't just coincidentally driving the same direction. They were actively following me. I grabbed my phone and pretended to call someone while driving, hoping the driver would see me talking. The car stayed behind me. I made another random turn, still there. Finally, I spotted a brightly lit convenience store ahead and pulled straight into the parking lot. I parked right near the entrance. The car slowed as it approached. For a second, I thought it might pull in too. Instead, it rolled slowly past the lot. As it passed under the streetlight, I got my first clear look at it. Dark gray sedan. And for a split second, I saw the driver. A man, middle-aged, looking directly at me. Not angry, not panicked, just watching. Then he drove away. I never saw the car again after that night. But even now, years later, I still think about one detail that bothers me the most. The night I changed my route home, the one where the car still found me at the gas station. There's no logical reason it should have known where I'd be. Unless it wasn't just following my car, unless it had already been watching me long before I even left work. When I was 16, my best friend lived about 15 minutes away from my house if you walked. Our neighborhood was the kind of place where kids walked around all the time. Quiet streets, street lights every few houses. Nothing that ever really felt dangerous. So when I stayed late at his place playing video games or watching movies, I usually just walked home. My parents never thought much of it. Most nights, I'd leave around 10 or 10:30 and take the same route every time. It cut through 2 residential streets and then followed a longer road that ran alongside a small wooded area. I'd probably made that walk 100 times without thinking twice about it until one night in November. It was colder than usual, and the streets were pretty empty. Most houses had their lights off already. I had my hands in my hoodie pockets and headphones around my neck, not really paying attention to anything except getting home. About 5 minutes into the walk, I heard footsteps behind me. At first, I didn't think anything of it. It was a sidewalk in a neighborhood. Someone else walking wasn't exactly unusual. The footsteps were steady, not fast, just a regular walking pace. I glanced back over my shoulder casually. About half a block behind me was a man walking in the same direction. He looked older, maybe late 30s or 40s. Dark jacket, baseball cap pulled low. I looked away and kept walking. For the next minute or two, I didn't really think about him. But then I noticed something. Every time I crossed the street, the footsteps crossed too. The first time it happened, I told myself it was coincidence. The second time, it made me uneasy. The third time, it made my stomach tighten. I slowed down slightly. The footsteps behind me slowed too. That was when the alarm bells really started going off in my head. I kept walking, but tried to listen more carefully. The distance between us never changed. Still about half a block, close enough to hear, too far to see clearly without turning around again. Finally, I stopped walking and turned around fully. The man stopped immediately. He didn't stumble or pause like someone caught off guard. He just stopped, standing there in the middle of the sidewalk, looking directly at me. The streetlight above him cast a dim yellow glow, but his face was partially hidden by the brim of his hat. We stood there like that for maybe 2 seconds. Then I turned back around and started walking again. Faster this time. The footsteps started again too. My heart started pounding. I checked the distance to my house in my head. Still about 5 minutes away. And the worst part was, if I ran, he'd know exactly where I lived. I tried to stay calm. Maybe he just lived in the same direction. Maybe he was heading home too. But then I noticed something that made my chest tighten. The next intersection was coming up. Normally I would turn left there. Instead, I kept walking straight. I didn't even look back. I just listened. A few seconds later, the footsteps stayed behind me. He hadn't turned. He was still following. At that point, my brain started running through every worst-case scenario. Should I run? Should I call someone? Should I knock on someone's door? But the street was quiet. Most houses were dark. I kept walking, trying to think. Then I decided to test something. I slowed down dramatically, almost to a stop. Behind me, the footsteps slowed too. Then they stopped. I started walking again. So did he. That was when the fear really hit me. This wasn't coincidence. He was matching my pace. I turned around again. This time he was closer, maybe a third of a block away now, still walking slowly, still staring in my direction. I forced myself to keep walking. My hands were sweating inside my hoodie pockets. Up ahead, I saw the road that led toward my house. If I turned there, it would be obvious where I lived. And suddenly, that felt like the worst possible thing I could do. So instead of turning, I kept walking past it. My heart sank as I heard the footsteps follow. At that point, I was fully panicking. I needed somewhere public, somewhere with lights. But there wasn't much around, just houses and long stretches of sidewalk. Then I remembered something. About 2 blocks ahead, there was a small park with a basketball court that sometimes stayed lit at night. If anyone was there, I could get help. I sped up. The footsteps sped up too, not running, but definitely faster. I glanced back one more time. He was definitely closer now, maybe 20 yards behind me, and he wasn't pretending to look anywhere else anymore. His head was pointed directly at me. I turned into the park entrance. The basketball court lights were on, but the court was empty. No one there. My stomach dropped. I walked onto the court anyway and stopped near the center. Behind me, the footsteps entered the park. Then they stopped. I turned around slowly. The man was standing near the entrance, half in shadow. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. Then he took one step forward, and another. My heart was hammering in my chest. "Can I help you?" I said, trying to sound louder than I felt. He didn't answer. He just stood there. Then slowly, he smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile someone gives when they're amused. After a moment, he turned around and walked back toward the sidewalk. Just like that. No explanation, no words. He disappeared down the street the way we'd come. I stayed on that basketball court for almost 10 minutes before finally leaving. When I got home, I ran inside and locked the door. I told my parents everything. My dad drove around the neighborhood looking for the guy, but didn't find anyone. We reported it to the police, but nothing ever came of it. I never saw that man again. But there's one detail about that night that still bothers me. When I reached the park entrance, I had to turn down a small side path to get there. A path that wasn't visible from the street unless you already knew it was there. But the man didn't hesitate when I turned. He followed immediately, which means one thing I didn't realize until much later. He probably knew the area better than I did.